Oh my god, it's a video that's not about Ultra Street Fighter 2. Praise be to Lord Gaben. Anyway, on to the actual point. So what's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and take this video with not only a grain of salt, but a big heaping bowl of salt, for multiple reasons. So, there's currently a rumor, I stress again, a rumor going around that Sony are going to unveil their third portable handheld system at E3 2017. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you take this with a giant heaping bowl of salt. One, it's not likely. I can't imagine it ever actually happening just because it's almost preposterous at this point. Two, where the rumor originates from. It actually comes from a Chinese media outlet who have reportedly been contacted and in touch with what I can only call, I'm not sure if it's the individual PlayStation China brand or Sony China, but either way, they've apparently been contacted by whoever, let's just call it Sony China for the purposes of this video, and apparently they're going to be showing it and demonstrated it, and everything is going to be basically embargoed its existence until E3 when it's first properly shown off and unveiled. So those are some pretty big, almost huge warning signs as it is. And two, or would this be three? Either way, I just don't see Sony getting back into it at all. Now, I'll weigh it evenly. I can see them doing it in one or two small aspects, but overall, for the majority, I cannot see them doing it. So, let's look at a couple of the reasons why I can see them actually doing it. One, they're trying to keep the PlayStation 4 momentum going. When the PlayStation Vita first launched, the PS4 didn't even exist, wasn't even announced or shown off. It just literally didn't exist. It was PlayStation 3 and that was it. So, at the time, they were still reeling, basically. They were still playing second fiddle to Microsoft, even if towards that actual time in the sales they were catching up, if not had already slightly surpassed Microsoft. But the overall public perception was that they were reeling, and they were still riding the policies and the old shitty stuff that Sony used to do that was all heavily associated with the PlayStation brand during the PS3 era, and it wasn't a good sign. It was always seen as, what's the best way to describe it? It was almost seen as an accessory, not so much an accessory, but a side project, maybe like an add-on to the PS3 or whatever. And then, yeah, when the PS4 was announced and all that, they started hyping up and giving a couple of extra features to the Vita to try and make it appeal to people who would be buying a PlayStation 4 or to people who already had one and were getting a PlayStation 4. Ultimately, it basically flopped in almost every facet and every capacity. The PS4 compatible features were laughable. I don't care what anyone says, remote play is not worth buying a €250 handheld for. Let's see what else there was. There was the extreme droughts and lack of games and lack of support from first and third party as well. So obviously, if you can't tell, we're on to the negative side here. So, I mean, you've got those huge first-party droughts, you've got those huge third-party droughts, and very few companies actually supporting the PlayStation Vita. On top of all that, you had the absolutely ridiculous choice to use a proprietary memory card system just so Sony could gouge on the prices. This was back in a time where you could get a 32GB SD card, standard SD card, which most devices used back then. You could get a 32GB SD card for maybe 15 to €20. Or you could get a 32GB PlayStation Vita memory card, which wasn't compatible with any other device. And lo and behold, it would set you back about 80 to €120. So it was absolutely ridiculous. It offered no incentive whatsoever. It was just literally so Sony could gouge the user back on them. Now, I know a later revision of the console actually included 1GB of memory, but at that point it was much too late. The damage was already done. I will say this though, the PlayStation Vita was a nice powerful piece of hardware. I do have the original model, the first 1000 series model, the one with the OLED screen before they gimped it down to cut costs and went back to an LCD screen. And the OLED screen is gorgeous, there's no denying that. And it is a very powerful piece of handheld hardware. But unfortunately, when you don't have the games out there, you don't have anyone to support your handheld platform out there, you could have the most powerful piece of hardware in existence. If no one uses it, no one uses it. If no one makes anything for it, no one buys anything for it. It flops, it flounders, there's no sales. We all know how the Vita went down in flames. Especially considering that Sony referred to it as a legacy platform. I think it was maybe 2, possibly even 3 years after its first launch. And I don't think Sony have even launched a first-party game on the Vita since then. And hell, barely even any third-party games ever came out on it. Let me give you a perfect example, okay? I bought my Vita on day 1. So I bought my Vita in February of 2012. I don't remember exactly what day in February it was, but it was launch day. But the fact is, it was the Vita. It's negligible and not worth remembering. So at some point in February of 2012, I bought my Vita. So I've had my Vita for over 5 years now. Over 5 years I've had my Vita. And I bought a game with the Vita because I won't buy a console or handheld without anything to play on it. Bought Dungeon Hunter Alliance just for the sake of it. It looked like something I could possibly play out of all the launch games. Played it for about 2 days and then never touched my Vita for about a year. So the reason why I bought it originally was I was it's me and tech. Me and tech go well together. I'm always interested in the latest thing and to see what they were going to do with it and all that. And I knew I was going to be buying one eventually because I wanted Persona 4 Golden. Now, unfortunately, Persona 4 Golden launched about 6 months after I got my Vita in the US. So I bought mine here in Ireland in February of 2012. Persona 4 Golden released at some point, I think it was like August, September, maybe October in 2012 of the US. And it didn't launch over here until February of 2013. I knew I was going to get one anyway, so I just jumped on it early. But my point is, I've had my Vita for over 5 years now, and here is my Vita collection. That's right, I have one more game if you include a digital release, which I don't, but this is my Vita collection after 5 years. Enough said. So overall, the Vita is basically, it's pretty much been dead since day 1. In fact, if you ask me, it was dead before day 1, for the simple reason is there was all these policies and all the info was out there pre-release, which everyone was completely turned off with. Think of it as Microsoft Xbox One syndrome. So when you look at it, all the information and all the stuff we know and hate about the Vita before its launch prevented people from buying it, which was a snowball effect because developers didn't want to develop for it because there was no sales, people didn't want to buy it because there was no one developing for it. It's a snowball secular. I don't know. Secular. I'm going to say secular. You know the word I'm looking for. It's a vicious cycle. There you go. I was trying to sound all fancy and use this big, crazy word that kind of backfired on me. So it was the same with the Xbox One. Xbox One has picked up a little bit, but that's a whole other video. Compare that to Sony's first handheld, okay? The PSP. A handheld which lasted, officially supported at least anyway, for a considerable longer amount of time than the Vita. Probably about twice as long realistically, because is the Vita even technically supported? When's the last time a Vita game came out? I know the last time I bought a Vita game was at the end of last year. I think it was the end of last year. Whenever Trails of Cold Steel 2 came out was the last Vita game I bought. But I can't even remember seeing any announcements, anything like that, even on PlayStation exclusive websites for anything Vita related or Vita game related. So let's move on or move back, whatever way you want to look at it, and look at the PSP. Sony's first handheld, released severely a long time ago at this point, was their first foray into the handheld market. Now, similar to the Vita, or kind of I suppose you call it a precursor to the Vita, the first-party lineup and first-party support that the PlayStation Portable, I was going to call it the Vita there for a second, that the PSP got was kind of patchy and almost negligible. For the simple reason is there was huge droughts between games. There was very few big first-party IPs that had a PSP iteration, and there was just the quality of them was always in question. Now, having said that, okay, the PSP got a huge amount of third-party support, especially when it became known to be a haven for JRPG fans and RPG fans, myself included. Many of the games I have for PSP are JRPGs. I'd say probably over half my PSP collection is JRPGs, most likely. Haven't counted it, but you get my point. So when you look at that, it was both of their systems basically pulled a reverse Nintendo. Bare minimum, if not any, first-party support. In the case of the Vita, no third-party support. So that basically took the two worst aspects of Nintendo. And then the PSP, though. The PSP had a huge amount of support. The PSP lasted about a decade in Japan alone. For the simple reason is, portable gaming is huge in Japan. It's much bigger than console gaming because of their lifestyle and their culture and all over there. So when you had games like Monster Hunter, which were basically keeping the system alive, and obviously you had your JRPGs and a couple of action games, a couple of whatever, but it lasted such a long time and got such massive support, especially in Japan. But not only in Japan, in the West as well, here in Europe, as well as the US as well. There was a decent amount of support on there. And let me give you a perfect example. So we've all seen back to earlier on in this video when I showed my 6 PlayStation Vita games, which is my entire Vita collection, after over 5 years. Here is my PlayStation Portable, my PSP collection. Not only do I have significantly more games, I believe I have 6 times as many games. I also have 2 PSPs. So there's a huge difference there in what it got in support-wise, what it got in feature-wise, and quality-wise, and media, not just media, but general population perception-wise versus the PS Vita. Wow, I keep getting almost backwards and forwards, so you see my point. So that is why I don't think that they're going to launch a PlayStation Portable 3, basically. However, I will play devil's advocate a little bit. I will say they're going to try ride the positivity and the momentum train and all for the PS4. I think they'll go to developers and just say, hey, we're developing this system to work in tandem with the PS4. So it's probably going to have like basic x86 architecture, so it's not going to be a bitch to program for. You can port your games over fairly easily. You can dumb them down a little bit, but maybe not too much, just to get them on there, so people can still get the same kind of experiences that they'd get under PS4, if that's what they want, under PSP3. So I think they're going to try ride that as well. They're going to ride the popularity of the PS4, the public perception of Sony as a brand and of the PlayStation brand and of the company onto the potential new PSP3 as well. And they're going to go with the fact that, hey devs, we have 55 million PS4s. This will be a great accessory for many of the people that are going to be buying it that have PS4s. So I can see them doing that as well. If they do actually release a PSP3, I think they will just straight up rip off the Nintendo Switch. It will be similar enough to maybe like a combination of the Vita and the Switch, which is where I got Vitch from. It's going to be a combination of those two. It's going to have a nice screen. It's going to have the controllers on the side. They probably won't be removable like the Switch ones. I'll get to why I think that now in a second. But I think it'll be a combination of something like that. It'll be relatively powerful for handheld standards. Probably be a little bit more powerful than the Switch if it does release with if they do actually release it and all that as well. The reason why I don't think the controllers will detach is because it will technically be a handheld system, or marketed as a handheld system, and I do think they'll have an extra feature where you can connect it to the TV, because like I said, they're just going to rip off the Switch, and with how popular that will be, and because of how many people have PS4s out there, and maybe even possibly PS3s, they'll just say, hey, instead of including these really expensive Joy-Con rip-offs, we're just going to let you use your DualShock 4 or possibly even your DualShock 3. So that makes sense, because there's 55 plus million DualShock 4s out there in like different homes. So it makes perfect sense that someone that would buy one of these would already have it. So I do think it would be a powerful handheld, no removable controllers, will connect to the TV, and will support DualShock 4, if not even DualShock 3 compatibility as well. So having said all of that, that's basically everything I wanted to get out. The whole PlayStation Vita issues and the whole PlayStation Portable issues that we covered as well, I think would persuade them, or dissuade them even, from actually releasing a PSP3. So when I look at it from their complete history and like business and marketing trends and what I think they would actually do on it, with hence, you know, the public perception of the company and how they'd market it to devs to make them make games for it. I think because of that, I've looked at all the positives and all the negatives on both an on objective side of it, and overall, I want to just say I don't think they'll do it. But if they do, you've heard what I think it's going to be and why I think it's going to be that. What do you think? Is Sony going to do a PSP3? Do you think they will? Do you think they won't? Do you think they'll show it at E3? What do you think the features or quality or power or whatever of it will be if they do? What do you think it'll be called? I think it'll have a really weird or funny name. PlayStation 4 Portable maybe, or something like that. Let me know all of that anyway in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter, details in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.